Hi everyone. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Daniel Padgett. I'm the head of conversation design at Google. It really is a pleasure to be part of this amazing worldwide event. Before we get started, I want to take a quick moment to thank the organizers for having me and pulling together such a remarkable set of speakers and presentations. This really is an amazing event, so thank you very much. Anyway, let's dive in. I want to start by saying I'm really proud to be part of this global community. It's been great to see the growth and wealth of new ideas over the last several years. I'm also really proud to be part of the conversation design team at Google. It's such a diverse crew. We've got linguists, cognitive scientists, musicians, creative writers, and interaction designers. We're really focused on creating a new discipline and new interaction models for this emerging hardware and software ecosystem. I'm sure you're familiar. It's growing rapidly. It's supporting increasingly personal, ambient, and natural user experiences. We mix a bit of art and science and do our best to really put people at the center. We borrow heavily from what we know about human communication, human language, and the sociolinguistic behaviors we observe and even practice every day. We borrowed a bit from Douglas Rushkoff at Team Human. We really are aiming to optimize technology for a human future. It's kind of a motto that we've adopted. Now, I don't think it's controversial. We're clearly at the beginning of a massive technological shift. We're rapidly moving away from a paradigm that required humans to learn how to interact with machines toward a paradigm where advances in natural language understanding, machine perception, computer vision, and more are completely flipping the script. They're enabling human-computer interactions that feel more natural, more intuitive, and more human. So I want to talk about that shift today. And I want to talk about how conversational user interfaces have been leading the way, driving adoption of these technologies, and why I think that's happening. And then I want to share some examples of cool things that are happening in the market, hoping that it will inspire new ideas from makers and creatives like yourselves. So anyway, let's talk about this shift and the role that conversational user interfaces have played. Now, in 2011, Apple introduced Siri to the world. They launched it on iPhone. Now, was it the first conversational user interface ever created? No. But it was the first that was right there in your pocket, and it was backed by a massively popular platform, and it focused squarely on the consumer. It was a really pivotal moment for sure. And then 3 years later, Baidu reported that they received 10% of their queries through voice, and given their user base, that's some really serious volume. Then in 2015, our friends from Apple came back and they publicly reported that Siri was managing 1 billion requests per week. It's a pretty impressive number. That same year, Amazon launched Alexa on Echo, a voice-only device that recorded sales numbers that made it the fastest selling speaker on the market. They sold a ton of those things, and people put them in their kitchens and their living rooms, and they showed that there was an appetite to skip the mobile phone in certain contexts and to get access to answers and actions via voice. Credit where credit is due, they kind of nailed it. In 2016, Microsoft reported that 25% of searches on the Windows 10 taskbar were done through voice. And Google also reported that voice accounted for 20% of searches on their mobile app in the US. Later that year, Google launched Assistant, something I'm proud to have been a part of. It's a conversational experience that now spans an ecosystem that includes smart speakers, mobile phones, smart displays, auto, and more. And we saw some pretty rapid adoption there too. So the big question is why? Why now? Why this relatively sudden shift? Well, these machine learned technologies and advances in hardware enabled speed, simplicity, and ubiquity. Users could get to actions and answers more quickly, more easily than even mobile, and they could do it from more touch points too. So first, let's talk speed. We live in an on-demand world. People want things and they want them fast. Their favorite song, their favorite podcast, a quick answer. I don't know about you, but I'm hard pressed to find anything as quick and as seamless as a well-designed voice action. There's just very little friction. So let's do a quick thought experiment. Let's play a game called How Many Taps? To play, just take out your mobile phone, or if you don't have it handy, just kind of follow along and think about how many taps it would take to complete the queries that I'm going to show you. How many taps? First, what's 15 times 24? How many taps would it take to complete that? I think the last time I did it was something like 25, maybe 30. How about this one? How many taps? Play the latest album by Gorillaz on Spotify. Gotta unlock your device, gotta scroll to find the app, gotta tap on it, you gotta tap on search, and you gotta look for it. Maybe you have it saved in your library or something like that. Quite a few taps though, right? How about this last one? Any direct flights to London next Sunday? What's really great is the complexity of these queries actually increases, but each interaction is just as quick as the last when done by voice. And it's actually even faster than doing it with tap on mobile or typing on your desktop. Now let's talk simplicity. The real beauty of a conversational interface is that users already know how to use it. There's really nothing to teach. That's because we're bringing roughly 150,000 years of language evolution to these interactions, perhaps more. There's some disagreement among scholars. It's just that human communication, like we see here, human language is so fine-tuned, so efficient, and so powerful, really. I mean, looking at this example, it's just 10 words, but the exchange actually communicates so much. Margaret says, I need a drink. So do we think Margaret's had a good day or a bad day? Probably a bad day. What kind of drink does she want? I don't think it's a soda. It's probably more along the lines of a cocktail or a beer. And when does she want that drink? She wants it right now. Now in response, Laura says, I hear the Eagle's good. So has Laura been to the Eagle? Doesn't seem like it. She's heard that it's good. Do they serve liquor at the Eagle? Safe bet, right? I think Laura understands that Margaret needs a drink. Is it close by? Is the Eagle close by? More than likely, or Laura's not really being all that helpful because she knows and has inferred that Margaret needs a drink and she needs it now. Now, before you go thinking that we don't really bring any of this along with us when we talk to machines, guess what? NASA and Brave researchers at Stanford found that we bring all of this and more to interaction with machines. In fact, they found when people hear any voice, human or computer generated, they automatically and unconsciously assign a personality to it. And it's done in an instant. You just can't help it. And finally, there's ubiquity. Now, we've been talking a lot about voice today. That's certainly kind of the primary mode of interaction for conversational interfaces, at least at this point. But remember that conversational experiences can also take place in messaging and chat apps where people can use their keyboard to type their intent. We apply many of the same principles and technologies to typed and written input, and that expands our possible reach. Now let's think about this for a second. Basically, you need one of these tools to engage in a conversation with a machine. A microphone to speak your query, a keyboard to type your query. Now, for the sake of this example, let's just set aside things like laptops, PCs, smartwatches, and tablets. Let's just focus on mobile. There are 9 billion mobile phones in the world, and there are 8 billion people. And each one of those phones has a microphone and or a keyboard. And that's some pretty serious distribution, which is good, right? But there's more here than that. Many people don't have smartphones or an app ecosystem or unlimited data plans. They use flip phones and feature phones instead, and they leverage cellular for voice calls and SMS. And that has its limitations. These conversational technologies, these conversational interfaces provide access. They can work on any device, on any network. They have the potential to be true universal gateways to the world's information and services. If you ask me, that's pretty powerful stuff. Now, with the time we have left, let's take a look at some of the opportunities that are emerging in the marketplace. First, let's get creative. These technologies are being leveraged to create interactive stories and interactive games for kids of all ages. The team at Google has done a great job. I don't know if any of you have played Lucky Trivia, but if you haven't, you should try it. It's a multiplayer trivia game, and it is super fun. Give it a go later on today if you can. There's also some really interesting things popping up with respect to co-performance and co-creation. True story, a colleague of mine got into language technology because he wanted to create an interactive opera. I don't think he's completed it yet, but I look forward to hearing and participating in that opera in the near future. Another true story, a colleague at Google developed an AI that wrote a new movie script based off what it learned from reading dialogue and direction notes in another movie script. He and a friend hired some actors and filmed the movie, and I have to say it was pretty weird, but it's definitely worth checking out. How about education? I think there's a ton of opportunity to augment the learning process, to help practice concepts, to test our knowledge, and to expand skills. In the last year alone, I've had some really interesting conversations with companies who are looking to leverage conversational technologies for interactive language learning. Like, imagine getting to practice your new language skills pretty much anytime you want with, a speaker that's fluent. Now, there's some really interesting implications for retail and commerce. There's the obvious, with the distribution and the access we discussed. Leveraging conversational technologies gives sellers more buyers and gives buyers more sellers. And I actually have an interesting story about that. I was traveling last year, I was in Japan, and a friend of mine who happens to be Japanese sent me to an optician. He knew that I liked eyeglasses. So I went to this optician, and it's a massive store, 2 stories, maybe 3. And I was browsing around and not really finding anything that I liked. I didn't speak a lick of Japanese, and I don't think that the people who worked at the store spoke much English. And I didn't engage at first, and I was looking around, and I was kind of disappointed that I was going to leave the store without buying something. I was really looking forward to going to the store. But as I was walking out, I remembered Google Translate. And so I pulled out my phone and I approached one of the salespeople there, and I typed in what I was looking for, and it read it to him leveraging text to speech, and his eyes lit up, and he led me to a part of the store, and he started picking out frames for me, and he started putting them on my face, and we kept having a conversation through the Translate app. Fast forward about an hour, I've got 3 pairs of glasses, he's fitting them for my face, and it was really one of the best retail experiences I've ever had, all thanks to language technologies leveraged by Google Translate. There's also some real opportunity for direct marketers to drive awareness, improve engagement, and increase sales. Well-designed on-brand chatbots serve as some real precedent here. They've proven to drive real business benefit, outpacing some of their more traditional counterparts on some really key metrics. There's a company I watch, they report really positive results with the chatbots they've created for partners in the beauty market. According to their case studies, one chatbot generated engagement that was 27 times higher than traditional email marketing. And with another bot, they saw a 51% click-through rate on the coupons that were generated during the interactions. And with both of those chatbots, they saw really high marks for user satisfaction. 82% of users polled loved the experience they had with one, while 91% of users polled reported they were highly satisfied with the other. And the last example from me, healthcare. There's a lot of opportunity here, and I'm really excited to see what happens in this space. I think conversational technologies could have a really big impact. For instance, treatment adherence. Reminders for when a patient needs to take their medication, or the patient could ask about the medication, side effects, for instance. Also appointments, really seamless way to find a time to meet with your care provider or your physician. There's also really cool applications, I think, in care facilities and hospitals, bedside assistance. Now patients need to press a button and that alerts a nurse, and the nurse comes in, has to ask, how can I help? And then the patient has to relay that information to the nurse, and the nurse has to go away and come back. There's a lot of time lost there. Imagine a patient just turning to a smart speaker and saying, I need X. And that is translated over to the nurse, and the nurse comes right away with what the patient needs.